Okay, my talk really was about the research that we've done on Twitter particularly, understanding how people are using Twitter in a number of different contexts. We've been looking at various political events, crisis events, but also everyday life and how people are using Twitter in everyday life. And in order to do that, we've had to develop a number of methodologies to really get a sense of what it is that we're looking at, what are the patterns in which people are using Twitter, what are the similarities perhaps between different events as well. So do all crisis events unfold in the same way? Do they show similar patterns of how people are using Twitter in those contexts? And we've been more and more moving now towards dealing with some very large data sets as well. And that has its own challenges, of course, as well. Trying to put particular hashtag events, for example, in the bigger context of the Australian Twitter sphere. And again, for that, we've had to gather some very large amounts of data to really get a sense of the overall shape of the Australian Twitter sphere, and then to see within that how the people who participate in a particular hashtag conversation, for example, are placed and what part of the Twitter sphere they represent. It's a really good question. Digital methods are to some extent an artifact that probably comes from that old distinction of online and offline, or digital and non-digital. And some people are very clearly advocating, I guess, the development of natively digital methods. Richard Rogers at the University of Amsterdam has been pushing that very hard. And that's really about developing methods that are not simply translating existing approaches, surveys, interviews, blah, 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 to a digital environment, but really dealing with the affordances of digital media and digital spaces and developing methods that are immediately appropriate, inherently appropriate to those spaces. The other side of the coin, the other side of that argument could also be that it really doesn't matter whether a method is digital or not, as long as it's appropriate to the object of research. So, and I have some sympathy with that, I think, as well. It's not so much important whether it's digital or not. It's really just you need to work out what the question is that you're researching and how you can best answer that question appropriately and considering the pros and cons of the particular methods that you're using. Well, it's been really interesting to see three different talks, I guess, from quite very different perspectives, I suppose, that in the end still had a lot of interconnection, a lot of overlap as well. So, the things that Christine talked about, particularly from an ethnographic, anthropological point of view, I think, translate very well, even to some of the very big data and very, very data-driven and sometimes very quantitative work that we've been doing, for example. There are still some significant shared points of interest, I think, in understanding perhaps particularly how to combine these methods as well, where you can use the big quantitative overview to identify the areas that are worth investigating in more detail from a qualitative point of view, or vice versa, where you can use the qualitative for the rich insights and then use the quantitative to put them into a wider context. And I think Eric's talk was very interesting in that respect as well, because he also pointed us to the really significant body of work that's already been done across a number of other disciplines as well, and what we can learn essentially from the physical sciences, what we can learn from computer science, what we can learn from a whole bunch of other disciplines that have already been working with big data particularly for quite some time, and have faced a lot of the challenges that in the humanities we're really only encountering now. Well, I wish the project, and I wish the network the best of luck. It's a really exciting time to be working on this, I think, and it's been great to be involved in this, and I really hope that it will continue, will really bring people together who are interested in these sorts of questions. So good luck, yeah.